Hey guys, it's Jayden Clark here from Jazz Lesson Videos, and today and this week I'm going to be taking you through my practice routine. So I'm going to be showing you 15 minutes of every single day, and not only just 15 minutes, it's going to be the only 15 minutes of practice that I'm going to be doing every single day. Now, I don't have the time that I did in college to practice hours and hours and hours, especially with work and all the other projects that I'm trying to work on. So I find that just getting a little bit of time on the horn is far better than nothing. In fact, it really actually helps me focus quite a bit during that short amount of time. So hopefully you find this interesting. We're going to be taking a bunch of tunes through the keys, probably a bunch of phrases through the keys. I'm going to play it by ear each day, just see how I feel. But just generally, I've found, especially recently, that transpositions it's been the most productive thing for me to practice, especially in a short amount of time. So get a window into my process. I'll sort of take you through a bit of my days as well. And yeah, see how we go. I'm going to go ahead and jump into my practice now. Alrighty, so day one. Jump straight into one of my favorite enclosure exercises. This one actually comes from Chad LB's package, 15 approach note enclosure exercises. And I've been practicing these things with Chad for years and years and years. Even before these PDF packages came out, he would send me these, and it was my job to get these up to speed as fast as I possibly could, essentially, and then through all 12 keys. Of course, I wanted to be clean. So I haven't touched this in probably a year, I would say. I've not really drilled this exercise for about a year, but it goes to show that when a sound is in your ear and you've practiced it enough over the years, that muscle memory comes back straight away. And I really felt this, especially with the ascending version. So, taking a look at this exercise real quickly. We actually start on the third. We go ahead and jump into a chromatic enclosure. You can see the 2 notes above, 1 note below, and then the root notes there on beat 3. And then we jump into 1, 2, 3, 5. Just a little melodic cell there. And of course, we then shift that whole measure up diatonically. So you see it moving up the major scale. When we descend, we've got the same sort of thing. We start on the third, we move into a chromatic enclosure, and then we play 1, 2, 3, 1. You see that particular measure is then shifted down. It voice leads really nicely, and it's a really, really good thing to take through the keys. So, great way to jump into this week and get it off to a flying start. So I managed to get every single key. Really didn't have too much trouble, even a few of the descending keys. I found that it took me a few attempts, but I never felt the need to actually bump that metronome down, which is what I found to be really, really good. It can sometimes be a fine line between pushing yourself with a tempo that might be slightly uncomfortable with a few keys, but then also practicing mistakes. So there's a fine line between those two things. I'd say if I know I can probably get it right on the second, third, even fourth try, then I'm not going to bother moving that tempo back. I want to push myself. If I've reached about the 7th or 8th try and I'm still making mistakes, if I were to push myself from there on, I probably risk practicing mistakes. So that's a really, really important thing to keep in mind when you're practicing tempo. And it's something that I like to be really conscious of, because you don't want to set yourself back by practicing mistakes. We want to learn the correct thing. It's better to learn the correct thing slower rather than stumbling your way to the correct thing faster. It would probably just take you longer, right? So that's why you wouldn't do it that way. So that went along really, really nicely. I was having some fun. Then decided to jump into a rhythm changes. Now, I found that I was repeating myself quite a bit, as I tend to do over rhythm changes, in my opinion. It's one of those sets of chord changes that tends to box you in as an improviser. The changes are moving really quickly. You got 1, 6, 2, 5, so you got a repetitive progression. And if you're trying to nail those changes, we sort of risk repeating ourselves. And I definitely found that to be the case on some of the trickier keys. So I was always keeping that in mind. I think I got through 5 keys or so, and that was good. It kind of got me to those 15 minutes, but I still felt it was really, really productive, because any time practicing tricky keys, especially on a rhythm changes, and full disclosure, I'd actually done this before, but anytime practicing tricky keys over rhythm changes, it's just always going to challenge me, that's for sure. So that's why I went with that one for that particular day. All right, so it's time to jump into a new phrase. It's gonna be a minor 2-5-1 phrase. So working on it without a metronome, which is fine when we're learning a phrase. And yeah, probably spend the whole session on it actually. I kind of figured that this was going to be a phrase that would stick with me throughout the whole week. And so I picked a really, really hard one. This is a harmonic embellishment phrase, comes from the 65 melodic phrases PDF package. Of course, another one written by Chad LB. This one I had not seen at all, so I had to go ahead and start from scratch. So this minor 2-5-1 phrase, pretty tricky. As we can see, we start with a Locrian natural 2. We kind of start on the 4 there, so we're already starting in kind of a weird place for a phrase. And when it comes to transposing, you're starting on the 4. It's kind of hard for your ear to get used to it, and I found that to absolutely be the case. So we move down to that natural 2, we ascend up the Locrian natural 2 scale until we hit beat 4. We see we've got a couple of chromatic passing notes that lead down to the 3rd of the 5 chord. Now you might see a strange spelling for that 3rd, but that's because we're using the altered scale over that 5 chord. So you see we ascend up the altered scale, we've got that nice triplet embellishment, and we then use a chromatic enclosure to land on the 7th of the 1 chord there. 1 chord, relatively simple, although we have that nice embellishment once again. Move down the arpeggio, and then we move into a chromatic enclosure of the 5th before we kind of have that embellishment that leads us down to the 3rd and then subsequently the 1. Very, very, very tricky phrase. Spent a bit of time just memorizing it, getting off the page as quickly as I possibly could, and then I found that with this particular session, even though I managed to get it through, I think almost half of the keys, I found that I could have been quicker if I had have thought of this phrase more numerically, right? So even thinking about, okay, well, I'm starting on the 4th, and then I'm moving down to the natural 2 of the Locrian natural 2 scale, I find that if my mind is using those numbers alongside my ear, then I get through stuff much quicker. I found that I was relying on my ear way too much for this, and I think that's what led to me only getting through half of the keys, and again, it's kind of sloppily as well. At this stage, practicing for as long as I have been, playing for as long as I have been, I would like to have done that quicker. So a little bit of self-reflection, but I think we still made some good progress on that phrase, because man, it's a doozy. Ended up getting the minor 2-5-1 phrase down through all 12 keys. So pretty good after one 15-minute practice session. The next 15-minute practice session, I'm able to get that phrase down through all 12 keys. Awesome, awesome, awesome. My end goal with any phrase is to be able to play each key one after the other with a metronome up to tempo, no mistakes. Essentially, the level I'm trying to get it at is as if somebody were to ask me, okay, can you play that harmonic embellishment phrase in the key of C sharp minor, right? For me to be able to do that on the spot, no mistakes. That's the level that I want these phrases to be at. Once I have it at that level, then I can move on to the next phrase. I don't want to spend any more time on that. So that's the goal for this week, essentially, and it's already good progress to get that up to 12 keys on the second day of actually playing the exercise. So I also decided to bring the rhythm changes back this day as well. So I decided to essentially just play through the keys that I actually missed on day one. And I found that I really flew through these on this particular day. For whatever reason, the focus was there, was really, really good, felt really good, of course, as always. A major, always having a bit of trouble in concert A there. But yeah, it just felt really, really good this particular day. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think just the focus was there. It's the only explanation I really have for that one. Alright, so it is kind of late here. Almost 10 p.m. I actually just had some dinner and got back from the gym. So I'm actually even yet to shower, and I'm going to get these 15 minutes in just because I know as soon as I shower, I'm just going to be sleepy. And so at least I'm still kind of there. I can get a little bit of quiet practice in, revisit the phrase, and see what tune I decide to take in all 12 today. It's been a big day. It's been a big day. So we'll get straight into this. Once again, starting with the minor 2-5-1 phrase, coming along nicely, managed to get it up to tempo pretty significantly, although I was yet to really nail each key one after the other. So again, that's my goal here. Even though I can play it through all 12 keys already, I'm really trying to be able to play it one after the other. That's the standard that I want to have these phrases up to. Again, it just means it's fully confident. It's also more likely to then actually come out in my playing. This day I decided to take all the things you are through the keys as well. This is one that I have practiced before, and I found that I recalled it pretty well. Again, it's been a little while since I've very deliberately taken all of these tunes through the keys, but this one felt really, really great. I remember when I first did it, this was hard. All the things you are through the keys, no matter how well you know the tune, it's going to be a difficult slog. I felt that I was able to transition through the keys relatively nicely, and it was all feeling pretty damn good. So once again, started with the minor 2-5-1 phrase here today, taking it through all 12 keys once again. Today I was really just trying to polish each key a little more. That's all I was really trying to do. Of course, a lot of repetition, but spending the time on the keys that needed it. This day is also when I decided to start on There'll Never Be Another You. So a tune that I know very, very well, a tune that gets called all the time, but I'd never once taken this tune through the keys. So I figured, well, it's such a well-known tune, why not just build a little more confidence on it? That last bit's always going to be the hardest. So I managed to get through the first 4 or 5 keys. I found, as always, and you'll hear me complain about this throughout the whole week, is that those last 4 measures, right? The 1, the 4, the 3, 6, the 2, 5, the 1. For whatever reason, I can nail this in a rhythm changes, but when it comes to There'll Never Be Another You, it's just, it kept escaping me in each key. Again, you'll hear this over the week. That section kept throwing me through a loop and then thus would sort of hinder my transition into the next key. So it's something that I'm still going to have to keep working on. But other than that, the form generally just flows so nicely. It's really easy to hear and has a lot of common harmonic devices that we use throughout tunes all the time, like the 1 major 7 into the minor 2-5 to the 6 that we see right at the start of the form. You see that in tunes like the Bird Blues, you see that in Confirmation, right? That exact same pattern. Of course, after that you have a 2-5 to the 4. And so once you start thinking about song forms like this, once you start thinking about the numbers, they become much, much easier to transpose. And I think that's what enabled me to transpose this particular tune so quickly. Okay, so on to day 6. With the phrase, I decided to put a metronome on, decided to really push myself and make sure I was moving on to the next key as soon as I possibly could. I wasn't trying to repeat keys too often, but you'll also notice that the keys weren't as polished sometimes. Okay, so really focusing on just pushing to the next key each time. I know that if I were to just slow it down, I know if I were to take a second between each key, that I would be able to play it correctly. It's another thing to train my mind to start thinking ahead to the next key. And so naturally started making a few more mistakes. Also felt a little unfocused this particular session. Becomes more evident when I play There'll Never Be Another You here in just a second, but my mind was a little all over the place. You may have heard in previous sessions when I'm playing over tunes with a metronome, it clicks on funny beats. And that's because I put the metronome on beat 4. It's just another one of these things that I've been doing forever and forever. The metronome, my metronome, never moves from quarter note equals 40. And I put it on beat 4 when I'm playing tunes. Again, it's just one of those things where I find that it helps improve my internal time. With There'll Never Be Another You, I found that I just spent far too long on the first 4 keys today, and focus was just not there. My mind was just a little bit jumbled. Okay, so day 7, the final day, started with the minor 2-5-1 phrase once again, really made sure to do a few iterations and decided to finish on an iteration that I felt good about, right? Just making sure I can move on to each key as quickly as I possibly could, one after the other with a metronome. Okay, and I'm pretty happy with where I got it towards the end of this week especially. Not too bad. Yeah, it's alright. Whatever. It's okay. And of course, finishing off with There'll Never Be Another You. On this day, for whatever reason, I was really struggling with those last 4 measures. You'll probably hear me getting frustrated every now and then. Where my practice goes from here, well, I'm going to really focus on those last 4 measures. In fact, rather than taking the whole form through all 12 keys, because quite frankly, the rest of the form for me, I find to be very simple. And I would only get caught up in those last 4 measures. So now it's just about being disciplined and isolating those last 4 measures, taking that through the keys, and then putting it back together with the rest of the form. That's where I'll go from here. But all in all, pretty productive week. I feel like I got a lot done for having only 15 minutes in a day. Some of those days where I was a little unfocused, I felt a little rushed just with the kind of schedule that I have at the moment. But hopefully this gives you an insight into how you can make quick practice sessions work as long as you're focused. I found that even having the camera on and recording allowed me to be much more focused because, well, I know somebody's going to be watching this afterwards. So it's a cool thing to do, and you know, time on the horn is always good. Time on your instrument is always good. So if you can fit it in whenever, it's a good idea. So hope you found this to be interesting. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again next time.